Avengers!
Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of Talking Smack, where we talk superheroes, movies, animation, comics, and much, much more. I'm your host, Josh Scar, and I am joined by a very lovely fellow replacing Alex for the week since he's off traipsing across Europe. I'm joined by the wonderful, the lovely, the handsome, the almost perfect in every way, Dan from Casting Views. Dan, how you doing?
All the better for hearing that introduction. How lovely are you?
No, that's your nickname, not mine.
No, I'm doing very well, thank you. Glad to be back on this show. So Alex is traipsing around my neck of the woods here, is he?
Yeah, I believe he's in Italy for a little bit, like the Rome area, and then they're gonna take a little cruise up into Iceland, if I remember his itinerary properly. He and his wife took their honeymoon to Iceland, so they're going to like Reykjavik and everything to kind of revisit and just relive some fun moments.
Very nice, very nice. But yeah, no, good to be back here on Talking Smack. How are you doing?
I'm doing all right. Busy, which I'm very grateful for you being able to take the time at the end of your day. It's weird for me because I'm recording not quite at noon my time, and it's just like no one's in the house besides me and the cats, and I don't have to worry about kids running around and screaming or potentially waking them up if I want to. I could get very loud, but I'm not going to. I already did that when you came on the stream with me before we hit the record button. That's when the fangirl scream came out.
Yeah, it's funny. I've literally just finished work, so I've ripped off one headset to put on another, and I've just shoved one computer over to the side to put the other one on.
So before we get into today's topics, there was some news that happened this week, which again, we're recording on a Friday, which is rare for me. So we have a little bit of extra news from the news dump Friday. But we did have some interesting stuff happen earlier in the week, one of which was Nintendo not entirely announcing that the predecessor, the heir apparent, the predecessor is previous. The heir apparent, the follow-up system to the Switch, is pretty much confirmed without them saying it to be released in November 2025, since they said that it will be revealed within the next fiscal year, which Nintendo's fiscal year ends in March. So I think it's pretty safe to assume that November 2025 will be the Super Nintendo Switch or whatever. And I'm okay with that.
Especially in a week where gaming news hasn't, or a couple of weeks actually, where gaming news hasn't always been the most, hasn't been the happiest
Favorable?
of news. Yeah, favorable actually. Yeah. So at least there's that little nugget there.
I can't say that I'm ready for the next generation of systems. I know everyone's always just waiting for the next one. In my time at GameStop, like I started when the Xbox 360 was at the end of its life cycle, just before the Xbox One followed up the 360.
Yeah.
I spent 3 years at that position at GameStop where everyone's just like, "Oh man, I can't wait for the Xbox 720. It's gonna be so great." And I was just sitting there annoyed that they're like assuming they know the name of it. But do you own a Switch, or have you had the opportunity to play one?
I've played on one. I have honestly, seriously thought about it, but I've never got round to it. But I think the Switch 2 could probably be the right time for me. I think I'm starting to have less time. I fancy something mobile, and I think, I don't see myself getting new hardware on the horizon anywhere else. So yeah, it feels like it could be the right time.
I mean, not sorry, editor Josh, future Josh, fix it. But I mean, if you haven't looked into it, definitely look into the Steam Deck. Not a sponsor, but definitely could be, should be.
Yeah.
I was going to jokingly ask you, how many times have you played Mass Effect since we last spoke, which I believe was the Mass Effect 15-year anniversary episode.
Do you know,
which I know it.
Well, I was going to say, it's funny. It's only the once, but I'm literally restarting it tonight. So
Nice. Very nice. Because I know I kept you up to date. I think in like October, November, I quit cold turkey on what's Tears of the Kingdom, Legend of Zelda Tears of the
Yeah.
Kingdom. Like I needed a palate cleanser, so I was like, I'm gonna play Mass Effect because we're in the holiday season and Steam has it on sale for the Legendary Edition for $8. So I picked it up and played it on the Steam Deck, and it plays wonderfully on there. And I played through it like 4 times in between between October and I think like March or April. And the Steam Deck just makes it like you're not sitting down and enjoying it because I'm just trying to speed run it. I want to get to the stuff I want to play. But I still just enjoyed the hell out of it, and it handles wonderfully. The lifespan on the battery that I have, I could probably play for like a 4 or 5 hour session with Mass Effect running and start charging by the end of the fourth or fifth hour.
It was great getting those updates from you.
Yeah. The only downside is I could not get screenshots. I don't know how to screen capture on there yet, without like completely interrupting the game flow. I will say that the biggest downside to the Steam Deck with Mass Effect is that if you have to pull up the side menu, not even like the home menu, but if you have to pause the game with anything within the operating system, it takes like 4 to 5 minutes for the game to properly
Oh, wow.
play again
Okay.
from
Yeah.
there. So like you have to be ready to just stop and wait for a while.
Yeah. Yeah.
The other news we had this week, we got our first look at David Corenswet as Superman in the suit. Have you had a chance to see the suit
Yeah, I
yet?
have. Yeah. Yeah. I've seen that picture.
What did you think of the suit?
Do you know, I didn't think too much. Not, no, it sounds negative. I didn't think, I didn't get as excited, I think, or as animated as some of the people on social media. I think it
Sure.
looks okay. It's just that, yeah, it's one image. It's got the iconic symbol on the shirt, on the chest. It's,
He's got the red trunks. Like people have zoomed in on the crotch that is barely visible, and you can see that he's got the
yeah, the
trunks.
cape. Yeah, I think there's bigger things in life to get worked up over.
Yeah. And like there are obviously segments of the quote unquote fan base that are already saying like, oh, clearly this is going to be a flop just because we have a suit reveal, and people are getting upset that you can see rolls in the shirt and stuff, which it's clothing
Yeah,
that happens. Like you can see it in my
yeah,
shoulders right
yeah,
now. My arms are propped up on my desk. Oh no, it's not a skin tight
yeah.
suit. Like whatever will happen. I think the only issue I have with this image is I don't like the collar or the turtleneck, whatever you want to call
Okay,
it.
yeah, yeah,
That's a new 52 edition that just never made sense to me, because if he's Clark Kent, or when he is Clark Kent, or when he's presenting as Clark Kent, however you want to say it, that collar just doesn't make sense to me as to how he hides
yeah,
it. He's either always going to have to be wearing a collared shirt to hide it, or he's wearing a turtleneck, or he's doing something extra to hide it, and it just doesn't seem practical to me, because conceptually he's supposed to always be wearing the suit underneath.
yeah, yeah. Unless you can't quite see it from that
and
picture,
and
unless he's got quite a long neck and it's hidden.
yeah, yeah, and I mean the dude's 6'6", so who knows how they're presenting it? Or maybe they just do the Christopher Reeves spins in a circle and gets naked real quick and then changes, but no one sees it because he's so fast. I don't know. But people are creating faux controversy about this because he doesn't look like he's in a hurry, despite there being a giant death beam in the sky behind him. I do think the framing of that image is a little weird. Like he just kind of looks like, oh geez, I just got home. Like I gotta go back out again. He just kind of has that posture and look to him. And I think maybe if it's more like if it was a bright sunshiny day behind him and he is doing this and he's just getting ready to go for a flight, I get that. But it is presented in a way that it does look like he's like not interested in doing what he has to do. So I can kind of understand that. But again, there's no real context to this other than maybe trying to convey some kind of tone for the upcoming film.
It's definitely an underwhelming image. It kind of looks like it could be from an ad in a magazine, like for some aftershave or something. But maybe the suit's looking quite battle worn. Maybe he's just literally sat down after a day of fighting and now it's
Yeah.
kicked off outside. But I do love, like you were saying, how people extrapolate from one image the future doom of this film already.
James Gunn has come out and said that this was taken on set by a professional photographer. Like everything that you see in frame is lit and
Yeah,
is something from the set of the film. It's not something that they staged to do some kind of suit reveal. Like, this is supposed to convey a little bit of the film as
Yeah.
well. There is something off about it, but it's a suit reveal. Like, that's the main thing, is we see the suit, we see the guy in the suit, and it looks great. I will say that even with the collar, the turtleneck, whatever you want to call it, it looks like a really good suit, and I'm excited to see what it looks like in motion and what it looks like in the film, and hopefully we get the trailer this July. But if you're making a big deal about it, the suit reveal, and just like trying to extrapolate as much information from this one image as you can, I think you're really grasping at hairs, and you're grasping at straws, whatever the turn of phrase is. It's just the only thing you're supposed to take away from this is that's the suit.
Yeah. Yeah. When I first heard
It's a good suit, in my
Yeah,
opinion.
when I first heard all this uproar, I thought, have they changed the colours? Have they got rid of the cape or something? Have they done something? Have they tried something quite bold and daring? But that's the Superman suit.
Yeah, I agree. It's the controversy is mostly from Zack Snyder fans saying that it looks like a bad
Right.
suit, which you mentioned. It's colorful, it's blue, it's red, it's got the yellow. It's a Superman suit.
Yeah.
And compared to what Henry Cavill wore in Man of
Mm,
Steel and
mm.
Batman v Superman, the colors at the very least are what you want that suit to be. Henry Cavill's suit was almost black, like it was a
Yes.
really
Yeah.
dark
Yeah.
navy. Like it's the navy on the sleeves of my shirt. That's blue. Like, that is big boy blue
Yeah.
Superman. So that's it for the news for this week that I really wanted to talk about. We're going to go hear from our friends over at I Hate It, Let's Watch It. And when we come back, Dan and I are going to do a tier list for superhero or I should say comic book movie character portrayals. So we'll be right back.
Hi everyone, I'm Lisa.
And I'm Dawn.
And if you've ever watched a TV show and thought to yourself, oh my god, that season finale plot twist was absolutely bonkers,
Or seen a movie and thought, wow, I need to talk to somebody about this train wreck immediately.
then we think you'll fit right in with our podcast, I Hate It, Let's Watch It. We watch TV shows like Riverdale and Emily in Paris.
And movies like Deep Water, Killer Sofa, Rubber, and Deadly Illusions, and we give them the total rinsing they deserve.
It's basically group therapy for movie masochists. So come check us out wherever you stream podcasts.
And we're back. I'm going to click my screen share here so Dan can see the tier list that we create. So, one of the things we talked about, or one of the things I've been thinking about, but I brought this idea to you, is the title of the tier list is Comic Book Character Portrayals Tier List. So, to me, what made this interesting is there needs to be some ground rules in what we're ranking with these characters and with these portrayals, because none of these are a one-to-one adaptation of the characters. They are the director's vision that he is interpreting from the script. So we have to take into consideration, does the character fit with the tone of the movie? Is the portrayal a good one within the context of the movie, I think, as well, or TV show in some cases. So I think those are the two main factors. Does the tone fit? And I guess the other way to put it is, do they feel like they belong in that
Okay.
movie?
Yeah.
So I think those should be our two main criteria. So let's get started here. The person decided to put this in alphabetical order. So we're going to start with Aaron Taylor Johnson as Quicksilver from Avengers: Age of Ultron. I think tonally he fits. It's a very Joss Whedon style character, very quippy, but I think the powers translate well. And I do feel like Aaron Taylor Johnson fits in the movie as well. How about you?
Yeah, I agree. I mean, he's not in it a huge amount, really, though, is he? But in terms of what you've set out at the start, yeah, I couldn't agree more.
So the only hiccup I can think of is the vaguely Eastern European
Yeah.
accents that he and Elizabeth
Yeah.
Olsen decided to go with for the character. So I think that brings him down a notch, because again, the idea is, do they fit in the film, and does the is the portrayal in line with what the tone is for the film? I think everything but maybe the vague Eastern European accent fits. So I'm going to give that an A tier ranking for that character
I
portrayal,
think that's fair.
because we're doing S, A, B, C, D, F. Does it fit? Is it does it fit with the director's vision for the film, and is the portrayal uh, accurate within, or does the portrayal fit within all that? I think it surely does with Aaron Taylor Johnson as Quicksilver. Again, take what you will about that film. We're not discussing the
Yeah.
films. We're just discussing the portrayal within the context of the film. Next up is the man, the myth, the legend, Adam West as Bruce Wayne Batman. You got to go S tier.
You should have
That's
just started with that already pre-filled. I mean, that is the definition, right? That is exactly.
it's a free
Yeah.
space. It's he fits the campiness of everything. He delivers the lines wonderfully. He's the title character, so he better fit within the context of the show in all aspects. Next up, we have Alan Cumming as Kurt Wagner, or Nightcrawler, in X-Men 2 or X2. I think he fits the role well in terms of, does the character feel like it belongs in the film, and is the portrayal accurate to what the tone of the movie is. I think that's another S tier performance and portrayal given our context.
Yeah, I was going to say, and for me, he's one of, even in, I'll say in our house, because my wife, she's not really a superhero movie watcher, really. But when we watched that, that was probably her favorite character in those films.
It's a really good interpretation of the character as well within the context of the film. Brian, say what you will about Bryan Singer, horrible person is what I will say, but he wrote it, he adapted a good script, and Alan Cumming as Nightcrawler is almost perfect. All he needs is some swords, that little pirate moment. Next up, Alfred Molina as Dr. Octopus in Spider-Man 2.
I can see where you're putting.
I it's an A tier. It has to, or not an A tier, an S tier. That is, he's the definitive Dr. Octopus. They haven't tried to adapt him again because it's like, how do you top that performance? I was considering an A only because the camp level of Spider-Man 2 is a little off, but he is consistent and he is the anchor of that movie. I don't care what anyone says about Tobey Maguire or Kirsten Dunst or anything like that. He is the anchor of Spider-Man 2.
Yeah, I was starting to get a bit stressed when I saw you heading for the A tier, because I was going to defend this one because, as you said, I think he's brilliant. I mean, him as an actor as well, but the portrayal of that character, I think, is standout as well. So, yeah, I think he joins the two that are already there perfectly.
All right. Next up, this is going to be a good conversation, I think. It's Alicia Silverstone as Barbara Wilson / Batgirl in Batman and Robin. So this is where the parameters come into place. Take whatever emotions you have about Batman and Robin out of it. Does the character portrayal fit with the director's vision? Does she feel like she belongs in that movie?
So it's another set of films I haven't got too much memory of, but I think she did.
I think that's a B performance. Yeah. I think her acting is very stiff in certain moments. Like it's later in the movie where she gets the Batgirl suit finally, and Alfred like gets up out of bed because he's been cured, and she's just like, "Uncle Alfred, it's me." Like, even in this movie, like that's harsh acting right there. So I think a B performance for Alicia Silverstone, given our parameters, I think that's a pretty fair statement, because like she's still pretty good with what that movie is and what it's trying to do, which is sell toys. Next up is Amy Adams as Lois Lane. I'm gonna say in Man of Steel, only because I don't want to talk about Batman v Superman or Justice League until I absolutely have to, because she's kind of an idiot in both BVS and Justice League. So Man of Steel is like the best Lois Lane portrayal. I'm going to give that an A tier ranking exclusively for Man of Steel.
I think it's fair.
She's the investigative reporter Lois Lane that we had never really gotten before.
Yes, yeah.
And it's Amy Adams. It's hard to not appreciate what she's doing with the role, even if she might not know what the character actually is about. Overall, I think an A tier ranking for that, given our parameters, is right where it should be. Next up, this one I think could be an interesting conversation. Andrew Garfield as the Amazing Spider-Man. Does he fit in the tone of the film? Does he feel like he belongs within that film? He's Spider-Man. He better fit. Um, I feel like I need to add a caveat with this one as far as what I'm considering, because there's a flaw in this film, The Amazing Spider-Man, The Amazing Spider-Man 2, that puts nearly 30-year-old actor Andrew Garfield as a high school junior.
Yeah.
That right there, it has nothing to do with his portrayal of the character. It has everything to do with the tone and the setting of the film by the director. So I feel like that immediately knocks him down to like an A rank. It's not S tier only because if this was a college aged Peter Parker and a college aged story,
spot on.
I think 100% S tier.
Yeah, no, I think that's a spot on.
All right, next up is an exciting one for me. Anthony Mackie as Sam Wilson, the Falcon, or Captain America modernly. But I mean, we're ideally just going to stick with the Falcon within the MCU. I think this is at worst an A tier.
Yeah. He plays it really well. It's a strong character in for me, even in the show as well.
Yeah, I think A tier is pretty good. He never feels like he's out of place, but I do think that he maybe he just hasn't had enough to do yet, although he has had an entire show dedicated to mostly him. But I think A is on par with the other A ranks that we have. Next, this is this is going to be a conversation of a lifetime. Does he fit within the tone of the film the director created? Does he feel like he belongs in that movie?
Well, those were some tone, those films, though, weren't they?
I love this performance. It is probably my favorite performance from Arnie. I have to, from the bottom of my soul, say this is an S rank performance.
That's where some people are going to find that difficult.
You can argue with me if you want. I'll bring it down if you think it needs to come down. But Arnold Schwarzenegger as Mr. Freeze, I think is an S tier performance portrayal within the context of the rules we created. Does he fit the tone?
Yeah.
Does he feel like he belongs in that movie?
Yeah, no, and that's what I was going to say, and that's where some people might literally sort of they might have to pick their jaw up off the floor now, is because, you know, especially who else might end up in that S rank. But in your rules, I think that's an absolute given, that spot.
I feel bad putting him literally above Anthony Mackie in our ranking here, and right beside Dr. Octopus. I'm gonna have to screenshot this and just tweet it out and just wait for the nonsense to ensue. But I don't care. I'm putting him in S rank. You agree, so that's where he's
based
going.
On Josh's rules, I'm saying here.
Cover your bases, Dan. Good call. Next up is Ben Affleck as Batman, our Bruce Wayne in Batman v Superman. As much as I hate a killing Batman, with what Zack Snyder set out for him, I think he pretty much nails it. I'm going to give that an A rank.
That's as high as it should be.
I think so.
Yeah, when I saw the picture, in my head I was toying, is it a B? But then if we're going for the tone of that film, and again do you know what? No,
he does a lot of the Bruce Wayne mannerisms really well. He's playing an older Bruce Wayne. He's playing an edgier Bruce Wayne because Zack Snyder likes his edge. Other than the whole killing Batman thing, like, I do think it is a really good performance. Like, Ben Affleck was bought into it. It fits the tone of the movie. He doesn't feel like he's in portraying a different character in a different movie. I think he fits every notch in our rule book. It's just there is a little bit of a bias against the actual final product of the film, but we're not talking about the films. We're talking about the character portrayals within the film.
And I guess, as you said, Bruce Wayne, he's a good Bruce Wayne. I do often sort of try to rate my Batmans as what they like as both characters, the Bruce Wayne and the Batman. And yeah, okay, all right, you've swayed me. You've swayed me.
So here's one I'm really interested to get pick your brain on. Maybe I'll let you go a little more into this. But Benedict Cumberbatch as Doctor Strange, like everyone calls him Tony Stark Light or Doctor Tony Stark, just because he has the cynical quips. I think he still does what he needs to do within the MCU and does it really well.
Yeah, I think he's one of the better characters. He takes that character, especially when he's playing the pre-Doctor Strange character. You know, he's playing. You just don't like him. He's arrogant. He's not a nice person. And then for me, anyway, he turns around to be one of the better characters. I think he takes the gravitas of the role as being, the Doctor Strange really well. I think it's believable. I think it fits within the films he's in. I think he can carry off, and it carries off the solo films as well. I like it. I think it's a good portrayal. Yeah.
So the question becomes, is it an S tier performance or is it an A tier performance?
For me, if I would try not to be swayed by you, I kind of was leaning towards the S for me.
I was leaning more into the S because, yeah, I feel like he has kind of become synonymous with the role. Like we could say the S tier stands for synonymous. It's something that, as you said, he blends into the role really well. Like, yeah, he does have the vague generic accent, American accent, but you get used to it really quickly. And I feel like he has really evolved into the character. He's not afraid to do voiceover work. Like he's done the Doctor Strange voice for What If, as well as doing other roles, but we're talking strictly Doctor Strange. So I think that works pretty well. All right.
There's a long list here.
Next up, this is going to be another controversial take. Carol Danvers, Brie Larson, Captain Marvel. I think that's an A tier performance. I think, well, maybe more B.
It's a hard.
Only because Marvel is too scared of the character.
Yeah.
I think it has nothing to do with Brie Larson's performance. I think she has done really well. I really loved her performance in the Marvels. But the Captain Marvel movie, they were clearly too scared to give her a personality. So they went with a memory loss thing.
Yeah, and the cameos in the other films aren't enough there's not enough of that to give anything away of her as the character as well, I think. So
yeah, and her appearance in Avengers Endgame was actually the first time she ever suited up for the role. So she was still trying to figure out who Carol was, and then her next movie is, oh, I have amnesia. I don't know who I am.
Yeah, so I agree with you, not because of her, like as you said, her performance itself, but just on how they've used the character. Absolutely.
Yeah, I think she 100% fits in with the Marvels, but it relies on the development that happens throughout Captain Marvel at the very least, and then Endgame, she's just a glorified cutscene. So yeah. I think B is, I think it's a little harsh, but I don't feel like it goes up with A yet. As much as I love Brie Larson and the character, and Brie Larson in the role, I feel bad, but it's not about feelings. But this next one is all about feelings.
Yeah,
Chadwick Boseman is T'Challa, Black Panther. He's S tier. We don't need to go into any further. He is S tier. He is synonymous with that role. Next up, S tier. I'm not even going to discuss it. Chris Evans is Captain America. To me, he is what Christopher Reeve is with Superman.
Yeah.
Like he just embodied Steve Rogers so perfectly once he got rolling with the character. Next up, Chris Evans again as Johnny Storm, the Human Torch. We're getting into Fox doesn't know what to do with the characters. Fox doesn't know how to tell a good story with these characters. And so it's a weird blend of camp while also trying to emulate a little bit of the X-Men movies. And the performances just don't match up. I think it's a C performance. I think he made a good Johnny Storm, but none of the characters ever felt like they were in the same movie at the same time.
Yeah.
This one I think we can discuss a little bit. Chris Hemsworth as Thor. He's really the only guy to portray the character, and if we're talking consistency as well, it's not entirely his fault, but he has had some wildly inconsistent portrayals as Thor, namely Thor the Dark World and Thor Love and Thunder. And then also you have the transition from Thor Ragnarok into Infinity War, where it's just complete tonal whiplash. Even so, I think it's an A-tier performance. He's very close to being synonymous with it, but the inconsistency with the quality of the portrayal is bringing him down a little bit.
Yeah, no, spot on. Couldn't disagree.
Here's another. Chris O'Donnell as Robin in Batman and Robin and Batman Forever. I think that's a C tier.
Yeah. Wouldn't argue for higher.
Batman Forever really just, it was transitioning into camp, but it didn't get there right away. But they really just let Chris O'Donnell be Chris O'Donnell. So there were times where he felt like he was in a different movie, especially the karate laundry scene. This one I'm going to be a little controversial on. Chris Pratt is Star-Lord, Peter Quill. I think that's a B or a C tier.
Oh, really? You think?
I don't think he's really synonymous with the role of Star-Lord. I think he's kind of upstaged by his other co-stars. But we are talking about the director's vision and tone. So he does fit James Gunn's tone, and he does fit James Gunn's scripts really well. He does feel like he belongs in those movies.
Is it
A?
Maybe. Like you said, I think he fits the films. I think it's a case of him. It's him being himself in a superhero film. Again, it feels like that sort of comedy character. I think it also the thing that works for him is that Star-Lord isn't necessarily a very common character on the screen anyway. So
yeah, and I mean, from the comics and other interpretations with like Avengers Earth's Mightiest Heroes, Star-Lord is much more stoic and straightforward. So they added a big character in him with Chris Pratt's charisma. I think A is as high as it could go, just because again, I don't, he never feels like he doesn't belong in the films. It's not part of the criteria, but I do feel like he can be a little grating at times, which again, that's more script than it is anything else, because like even just his introduction in Avengers Infinity War, there's that moment where Rocket, Star-Lord and Gamora are having a conversation about going to rescue Thor's SOS beacon, and Rocket's like, oh, we can go steal their stuff, and Star-Lord goes bingo. I'm like, that's unnecessary.
And for me, it feels like the other characters held their weight or held their own when they were with the other characters more so than he did.
And he just kind of let his Chris Prattisms get a little too wild, I think. All right, next up, this is A or S. It's Christian Bale as Bruce Wayne Batman.
For me, I'm saying S. For me,
S. I can be swayed to S. The only complaint I have about Christian Bale as Batman is the voice. The voice, especially going into The Dark Knight, The Dark Knight Rises, it does feel a little ridiculous.
I'll allow you to talk me down on that one. Actually, I guess so.
But does it affect it? Does it affect the immersion?
I think only at the start. I think once you get into it, I think you do get used to it. He's just a very aggressive Batman, right?
It works in Batman Begins. Like he goes just more into like a little raspy. Like he just brings it down and just gets a little raspy. And then I think he just saw everyone responding to the swear to me. And then he's like, maybe I should just talk like that the entire time.
But then he's probably better than Tom Hardy's Bane in the final one. So he probably wins out there. So he could probably stay up there, right?
I think S tier is pretty good. I think, A is as low as that goes, but I think S tier is, he never feels like he's not in that movie.
No.
Next up, Christopher Reeve as Superman. That's S tier. No pun intended. He encapsulated that role so well. There's that meme or just trope, if you will, going around of when he transforms and he just props himself up and he changes his posture to show Lois that he's Superman. He and Richard Donner just understood the character even before the 80s and 90s kind of added more to what differentiates Clark and Superman. He just had it.
Yeah. And he's the Adam West of Superman, right? He's
In a more serious way,
yeah,
yes.
yeah,
This one, I don't feel like there's enough context to it, but Cillian Murphy as Jonathan Crane or the Scarecrow in Batman Begins, although this is the Dark Knight Rises poster, I think it's a B tier.
Yeah.
He doesn't get a lot of play. He doesn't become synonymous with the character, but he does really well with it, and he fits
Yeah.
within the context of the
fair.
movie.
Yeah,
Next up is Robin Scherbatsky, aka Kobe Smulders, aka Miranda Hill from Marvel's Avengers and Shield. This is another one where we just don't get enough time with her, but I don't ever feel like she's not part of the MCU.
yeah,
So I would put that in the B
yeah.
tier.
No higher. I like her, but I just find she's what's the right word? Is it stoic when it's almost like she's trying to be too serious? Sort of at times, it's a good character, but as you said, there's just not enough to.
Yeah, they never fleshed
Yeah.
her out as Maria Hill. Like she never got a chance to really show her personality. There was a little bit in The Winter Soldier. She had a glorified cameo in Age of Ultron, but her biggest play was in Avengers and then also in Secret Wars. Secret
Yeah.
Invasion. Avengers is a much better portrayal of the character, I think, than in Secret Invasion, which she gets killed off by the end of episode 1 or 2. So I think B tier is right where she belongs. Next up is Colin Farrell as Bullseye in the Ben Affleck Daredevil movie.
Don't really remember it that
I'm
much.
going to give our first D.
Yeah.
I think he's going for something, but he does not feel like he belongs in the same movie.
Yeah.
He is a completely different character. He's much more camp. Although there are campy moments, like there's the whole like fight dance in the playground that happens in that movie between Daredevil and Elektra. His Bullseye, he's got the Matrix leather coat, which like I guess aesthetically that kind of fits since everyone else is in leather. But overall, like I think his Bullseye is wildly entertaining, but it doesn't fit that movie.
And this is a personal thing, but doesn't matter what role he's in. When I see Colin Farrell, I just see Colin Farrell. That's the thing with me. It's one of those. So I find it difficult. Whether I like him, I'm not saying he's a bad actor. It's just when I say I didn't see Bullseye, I saw Colin Farrell.
You're gonna have to talk me into one of these two. Dane DeHaan as Harry Osborn. I'm gonna go D or F. I don't know if we're including the Green Goblin performance in this. If we're including the Green Goblin performance, I'm gonna go F. But I think as a Harry Osborn, I think you could persuade me to be a D.
Yeah, it wouldn't be higher than that. Again, I'm not too fussed with that performance. Didn't get on with it.
I think as Harry, I think it's fine. But when he becomes the Green Goblin, that's when it like really just collapses. But given that they're giving us
Harry,
the tier list is giving us as Harry,
okay.
I think we'll just assume he's Harry Osborn. So we'll give him a D just to be nice. Next up, we've got Danny DeVito as the Penguin, Oswald Cobblepot in Batman Returns. With our rules, that's an A or an S tier. I have my own feelings about the interpretation of the character from Tim Burton, but that's not Danny DeVito's fault. This is, does he belong in the movie? Does he fit the director's vision? I'm gonna go A tier.
Yeah, I agree. I'm trying to formulate the right words here, but yeah, I mean, like I said, I think the look of the character fits the film. There's just something about the character, and like I said, it's not Danny DeVito, but I think an A tier is more than fair, right?
Well, we already have Arnold up in the S tier. Do I go do a big retcon and maybe bring him down? Because I don't know that we added the synonymous stipulation there. I don't know other than it's more infamous than it is synonymous.
Well, for me, I feel the Arnie performance felt far more in keeping, and seeing one of the other classic Batman villains when I saw you scroll up earlier, that would be an auto S. For me, this one just feels more natural in A. I mean, if it went up to an S, I wouldn't be upset. If you brought Arnie down, again, where it's about semantics, but for me, I think the Arnie position for me feels right for him and that character.
And I am thinking about Batman Returns a little bit, and the tone of that movie is also a little wildly inconsistent because it does shift between camp and overly serious a little too much. Like with the previous movie with the Joker, you can kind of do that because the Joker lends himself to do that. But with the Penguin and Catwoman, like there are some elements where it's like, oh yeah, this is just like Batman 89,
Yeah.
but then also it shifts into Batman 66 and it's a little tonally disjointing. So I'm going to leave it. I think A tier for Danny DeVito as the
Yeah.
Penguin is good. Oh man, we might have to just start picking and choosing. So as fun as this conversation has been, we just took a quick moment to go through and see what else we've got going on here. And I think for what is not a video that we're creating, this might not be the most interesting conversation in terms of like where's everything. But this has been a wonderful conversation with Dan. I like what we're doing with this, but we've still got how many are 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8 9 10 11 12 13 14. There's 14 columns per row. We've got like 8.5 rows to go still. So in lieu of running this episode for 2 hours, we've already had a really good conversation. There are just, I think I'm going to scroll down. Maybe we just highlight like 1 or 2 performances that stand out from the list here. For me, I saw Michael Clark Duncan as the Kingpin from Ben Affleck's Daredevil. I would have put that in S tier.
Yeah.
To me, he is synonymous with the role. He fits that role perfectly. He had the voice, he had the gravitas, he had the je ne sais quoi, where he just, you could be like, yeah, he's just a sleazy businessman, but he's got charisma. So, that's just the kind of person they are. But then you see the darker side of him and you're like, yeah, that man could crush me.
Yeah, he is the character. Yeah.
And that's one of the few unfortunate ones here where it's like, oh man, the movie bombed and he died. Like if Marvel could have brought him back instead of Vincent D'Onofrio, I think people would have been a lot more excited for him, some MCU stuff. But anyone else from these images really sticking out with you as like S tier or just bad?
I mean, S tier, are we looking at? I mean, we've got a couple of Jokers there, right? Is that Heath Ledger third?
Yep, third column there at the top. Yeah, we've got Gary Oldman as Commissioner Gordon. Like I think those 2 are S tier performances. Like DC is continually trying to replicate that Joker formula that Heath Ledger and Christopher Nolan found.
Here's an interesting one, actually. I want to put to you. What about Scarlett Johansson
As Black Widow? I think I would put that in like a C or a B tier. She just, as much as I love Scarlett Johansson as like a beautiful person, I don't think she has anything that really makes the character notable. She has a sly wit, a dry wit about her, but that's like every other character in the MCU. Yeah. I don't think there's anything particularly notable about her performance other than, again, she fills out the suit really well.
It's just the normal, just a normal performance in those films, isn't it? Like
it's Scarlett Johansson playing Scarlett Johansson, who can occasionally kick someone in the face. I kind of want to call this one out just because there are rumors that she might be appearing in Deadpool 3. Jennifer Garner as Elektra.
Okay.
I think I would probably put that as a C or a D tier. And that's partly because I think she fits in Daredevil. In her own solo movie, I don't think anyone had any idea what was going on. Like Elektra, if the internet was around back then, or like as powerful and as what's the word I'm looking for, as viral as it is now, Elektra would have been shit canned as badly as Madam Web was. And like Elektra's a more notable character too. So like that performance in that movie would have just buried Jennifer Garner, I think.
Yeah, agreed. I mean, it was bad enough without there was enough criticism without the social media that we've got now. So yeah, again, I think you're spot on there. What's your take on, if I get the name right, is it Grant Gustin, the Flash from the TV show?
That's a good conversation. I stopped watching The Flash around season 4. Like I just fell behind on all the Arrowverse stuff. and I was just like, whatever. I think the portrayal is fine. I think my problem is more the issue with the CW format where everyone needs a team.
Yeah, yeah.
So he never really becomes the Flash. He always just becomes the tool of Team Flash, in my opinion. And like maybe that changes in later seasons, but he just I think part of it is also the suit. The suit never hit a point for me where I was like, yeah, that's the Flash suit. Like it just none of it really blended together. So I would probably give that a generously, I think I would give it a B just because he did play the character for 10 years. So there had to have been something to it.
Yeah, I like him. I like his portrayal. But even me, I went off the show after about the 4th or 5th season, because it just felt too elongated. But I think he was, for me anyway, the standout performance within that show. Anyway, probably more so out of the costume than when he was in the costume, to be fair.
I think I can pull a couple more here just to be a little more thorough in the conversation. Since you're British, and I think this might be an interesting conversation. James McAvoy as Professor X, which I don't see Patrick Stewart on the list here, which is weird because Patrick Stewart would be S tier. James McAvoy as Professor X, that's one where we have to take into account our rules where X-Men First Class is when he becomes paralyzed, and we go through a journey with him. And I feel like he does fit pretty well in all the movies. The only issue becomes he never wanted to get his hair cut. And until they basically made him in X-Men Apocalypse. So he's always just long-haired hippie Professor X, which I think works for First Class and a little bit with the drug addict interpretation they give him essentially with Days of Future Past. But then the character just kind of becomes very one note after First Class, and even a little bit in Days of Future Past, where he's just like, I can't use my powers because if I use my powers, then I can't walk.
Yeah.
And it just
didn't convince me as a portrayal for me anyway. Yeah. I mean, again, I like him, but
I don't think I feel like that would be a B tier performance though. He does really well with what he's given, but it's never as immersive as Patrick Stewart as Professor X.
Yeah, no, agreed. It doesn't jump out to me. I wouldn't even remembered that he played that if we hadn't have done this now.
That's fair. I mean, he played Professor X almost more than Patrick Stewart, I think.
Yeah, that's a good shout, isn't it? Yeah.
Harley Quinn, Margot Robbie. I feel like there's a few things working against her to make her synonymous with the role, namely bad movies. I think she did really well in The Suicide Squad and with what she was given in Birds of Prey. I think in 2016's Suicide Squad, Oscar-winning Suicide Squad, they really just went, oh, the new comics have her in short shorts and a corset. Well, we can't have her in a corset, but we can leave the short shorts. Let's just put a bunch of tattoos on her and make her punk rock. I think she makes Harley Quinn a palatable character because I know one thing for a lot of people is the heavy New York accent is an issue for some people. But I think with what she's given, I think that's an A tier performance. Similar to Chris Hemsworth, her movies and the tone of the character are wildly varied.
I was going to ask you, actually, is that what drops it to the A for you, that varying?
She feels like she is a brand new character in every movie she's in.
Yeah, that's fair.
And I feel like that's similar to Chris Hemsworth, where she encapsulates the role really well, but because the character's portrayal is so wildly varied, it just doesn't fit.
The thing that's gone in her favor as well is that it's a role that hasn't been portrayed on the screen before, well, outside of animation potentially. So again, it's not a role that many people would know. So for a lot of people, that's why she is, right, Harley Quinn.
She gets the benefit of recency bias as well as, like you said, being the only person to portray it. So like there are some things that play in her favor with that, but I do think she plays the role really well. I do have a little bit of a bias against the face tattoos. Like I don't mind the other tattoos other than the very gratuitous Lucky You tattoo that's in her lower abdomen. that they show off several times in the 2016 Suicide Squad. Like that's a little too on the
Yeah.
nose. But overall, I do think that's an A tier performance. I don't think it's S tier only because I feel like someone could come down the line and just knock the performance out of the water, but that also is reliant on script.
Did we have anyone in the F? No, we haven't at the moment. So
I mean, if we want to just look here real quick, if F tier performances, I would do kid from Ready Player One and X-Men Apocalypse. First Class, I would do his Cyclops, I think. And part of that is just Fox never understood how to do anything with Cyclops. You can also have what's his face from Top Gun Maverick as Reed Richards in Fantastic Four.
Yeah.
I forget his Miles Teller. That's his name. That I think that's an F tier performance as well. Sansa from Game of Thrones as Jean Grey, that's F tier. I mean, the thing that these have in common is these are late stage Fox movies, and they just were throwing everything against the wall. They had no idea what's going on here. But at the same time, you have Quicksilver, Evan Peters, that's his name. I think he might be S tier. Like their portrayal of Quicksilver in those movies, even with the limited screen time he has, just like those speedster moments that they have are just so good, and he plays them really well. Like the breakout scene in Days of Future Past where like someone spilled their coffee and he just runs by and takes a quick little sip. Just perfect. Ezra Miller, that's another one where I would probably go D or F tier. They always feel like they are not in the same movie as anyone else. Even in the Flash movie, their performance is just not on the same level as what everyone else is putting out there. And especially in Justice League, it just does not feel like they're in the same movie at all. That's one I would give an F tier too.
Okay, so we padded that out a little bit. That tier as well.
Yeah, we got to make sure there's some. I mean, there are clearly some bad ones, but I don't like skewing negative, but what's his name from Iron Fist? That's another.
I never watched that show either.
Finn Jones from Game of Thrones. That was just completely miscast. Like he apparently did not want to train to do any of the fight choreography. He was just like, I'm here for a paycheck. I wanted to be in a superhero something or other, and let's just do this. So Finn Jones is another one that I would give an F tier to. He just never fit into anything that the Netflix Marvel shows were doing.
Let me throw one more at you then, just because it's jumping out here. Jim Carrey, Riddler.
Ooh, I would probably put that in the C tier because they're clearly just trying to let him be the Joker, but they have to fit it into the context of the Riddler.
Jim Carrey in a Riddler suit.
Yeah. Batman Forever is going more camp, and I think that's part of the inconsistency within the movie because Tommy Lee Jones is trying to do a Tommy Lee Jones thing, but he's also trying to keep up with Jim Carrey, and Val Kilmer's doing a very stoic Bruce Wayne Batman who's got his own love thing going on. He's more interested in that. There's just a lot going on in Batman Forever that doesn't make a good movie or a great movie in any stretch of the imagination. I think his performance is fun in that movie, but as the Riddler, and does he fit in that movie? No. And you can even see it in the sequences where he is in there. Like he stands out like a sore thumb, and that's Jim Carrey. But with what these movies are going for, I don't think he really fits the rest of the film as well. But I think that's a good place to let off. I mean, Tom Hiddleston's Loki, that's an S tier. There are obviously a bunch of these that we have not touched on, but I'll put the link for the tier list in the episode, and I'll get a screenshot of what we have here just to maybe get some engagement. Let's just get that real quick here. Well, Dan, this has been a lot of fun. Thank you for taking the time to be here, and let everyone know where they can find you.
You can find me across social media and on podcast platforms at Casting Views. Yeah, if you haven't heard my show, give it a try. Hopefully you'll like it.
What episode do you have coming out this Sunday that will be available now?
So this Sunday at time of recording is actually going to be a solo episode of me, just me. And I am talking about doppelgangers and mistaken identity. So, yeah. Yeah, and in it I share quite a
You texted me not that long ago about how you saw someone at your work or on your way to work where you're like, Josh, are you
Do
in
you know
London?
what? I should have mentioned that. And I remember asking people at the time about some, but yeah, there was a guy who was your exact doppelganger. And the funny thing was, I'd only just sort of known you for a short time at that period as well.
All right, everyone. Well, thanks so much for taking the time again, Dan. And we are going to start playing the outro music as soon as I can find it because editing is fun. But before we do that, Dan, as you well know, we are closing in on episode 150, and people can submit their superhero SmackDown fight suggestions to us, where they can be entered in for a chance to win a Steam copy of Marvel Midnight Suns. So all you have to do to get entered is send us a submission at tsmackpod@gmail.com or use the hashtag Talking Smackdowns, SMACDOWNS. So we are closing in on that. Where I think we're only like 3 weeks away now, which means we have 3 recording sessions to get to before we do that. It's going to be a big one. We hit over 30 submissions at this point. So it's going to be a fun edit, and it's going to be a little time consuming, but it's going to be fun.
Do it, take part. I really like that game, by the way. So yeah, get into it to win it.
Don't forget to join our Discord. The link is in the episode description. You can find us on all of our social media platforms at Talking Smack Pod. We're on Blue Sky, Instagram, Threads, Hive Social, Post News, Facebook, YouTube, TikTok, and Lonnie's website. Again, email us at tsmackpod@gmail.com for your thoughts, questions, reviews, and Talking Smackdown suggestions. Thank you to Leo Allen for the musical themes you're hearing now, Beppo for our original avatars, Retro Ale Studios for our Ricky avatar. Please like, subscribe, rate, review on your podcatcher of choice. And for your review, all you have to do is let us know if you'd rather watch Madam Web or listen to the podcast. Thank you, Dan, for being here again. And thank you, dear listener, for taking the time to listen. Please take care.
Watch Star Trek.
And listen to Casting Views.